Morrish, who has waited all weekend to come and speak to us this afternoon.
Finally.
Mo has been practicing since 1990 and has been teaching for over 20 years. He's also a funeral celebrant, so in case you didn't notice, in relation to the theme of celebration, we've started and now coming to the end. And with that, I'd just like to pass you on to Mo.
Thank you. Good morning. Excellent, you're with me. Good. Like to see that. Life is that luminous pause between two great mysteries which yet are one. Carl Jung said that. And every day in our homeopathic practice, we work with the spirit-like life force hidden in our medicines. We work with the spirit-like life force which enlivens the material body. These forces are invisible, intangible, just as are the two great forces which shape our world. Eros, life, and thanatos, death. I think the task of the homeopath is to assist our patient to unfurl out of mystery into maturity, hopefully, and back into mystery with the minimum degree of friction, tension, resistance, tightness, holding on, and the maximum degree of flow, ease, letting go, thus enabling as healthy a passage as possible. Does that sound like a reasonable way to use a life as a job? Sounds all right, doesn't it? Tuning healthy instruments, Bill was talking about. It's a good way to contribute to this world, I think. The question I asked myself was, how do we do that? Sometimes I've wondered, how the hell do we do that? But we do that, don't we? Every day in our homeopathic practice, we do that. How do we do that? Well, essentially, in my experience, which is all I'm bringing here, we do that by acknowledging mystery. Mystery, the unknown and the unknowable. And we develop a working relationship with it, with the invisible, with the intangible, spirit-like aspects of life and human being. Also, I think by cultivating an authentic presence. Authentic is a word Bill and Linda have used during the weekend. An authentic presence. And a deepening awareness of the tides and the times and the cycles and the seasons in human maturation, including the importance of this thing called death. I would like to offer a worldview for your consideration, only for your consideration. You don't have to believe a single thing I say or agree with it. It's up to you. But a bigger picture, a greater totality, if you like, within which to frame homeopathy. I want to speak lightly, maybe even poetically, about things which are familiar, and maybe some things which are difficult. Yet from a perspective which I hope will bring further thought, further consideration, and at least maybe some refreshment. I'd like to thank the Irish Society of Homeopaths, wherever the rest of you lovely people are, for inviting me here, and for giving me this opportunity to write something new. I'm kind of feeling that I've had a very good supper, and now I have to sing for it, which is only fair, but I hope it's sung well enough to deserve the fine supper that I feel I've had. I'd also like to thank our son Jamie for helping me set up a PowerPoint presentation, something for which I have no interest and certainly no facility. That's what kids are for, isn't it? If it goes wrong, it won't be down to him. It's because I've got one of those auras. It sneaks around electronica. Do you know those ones? And they just stop working. So if it goes kaput, we'll have to deal with it. Just before Christmas, Claire asked me to write a little biography, which is a kind of strange thing to do, and some words about the talk I was going to do. Well, I just found out that I was coming here, so I had no idea what I was going to talk about. And I'd said to Claire, by the end of the week, I will send you an email. The end of the week came, like it does. No words. I promised, said about 5 to 5 on this thing. I wrote the words that I began. And I kind of hoped, but I kind of thought that she might come back and say, that's not the theme of the conference. We don't like that. But she didn't. So after Christmas, when I came back to work, I thought, right, let's get this out. Oh, that's a difficult question. What the hell am I going to do with that? And I have to say, just for about 15 seconds, I did think about, find some cases about death and dying and palliative care and stuff, and it'll be fine. Yeah. And then I remembered Bruce Springsteen. Bruce Springsteen. So last June, Ali and I went to see Bruce Springsteen at Wembley. We like Bruce. We like going, Bruce! We'd like to have seen him in Dublin, but that wasn't going to happen. And he was doing this thing called the River Tour. Now, The River is a double album that we both really enjoyed a million years ago, and he was going to tour it. And he was going to play every song on it, 20 songs. And we thought, this is a one-off. He won't do that again. We will pay the shitloads of money they're asking. 130 quid a ticket, we don't do that. But we did. The River Tour. I confess, I even bought a T-shirt. The River Tour! I don't wear it when the kids are around. It's not at all cool. Anyway, we got there, we rented a horrible, mousy little hotel somewhere near Wembley. We had a craft beer in the sunshine, all going well, the lovely crowd building up. We got in, all the fans, they're old. They're like me, they've got, rock and roll. It's changed. Anyway, so we got in and Bruce played a fantastic set, I have to say. It's 3.5 hours, typical Bruce, wonderful stuff. It's just that he only played 6 out of 20 songs. I'm still twitching, aren't I? 6 out of the 20 songs. It was not the River Tour. And I felt disappointment. So when I sat down to write this, I remembered Bruce, and I thought, if even one person amongst you thought, I might even go just to hear what that strange thing is going to be about, and then I didn't do it, I'd have to kill myself. So here we go. Yeah. Like anything in life, like any meaningful conversation, it has to end generally with, and so we'll see how it goes. And so we will. My homeopathic practice has been inspired, I have to say, and influenced primarily by the work and writings and thoughts of 2 men. Dr. Samuel Hahnemann, we know him. I might even be able to do this thing. There he is. An intelligent face, look at that. Genius, the forehead. There he is, dear Dr. Hahnemann. And also by a gentleman called Lao Tzu. Anybody heard of this gentleman? Many. Lao Tzu or Lao Tzu. Still got the head, the thinker. Lao Tzu, the old master, the Chinese sage whose authentic voice has sounded down through the Tao Te Ching for over 2,500 years. Tao Te Ching. I understand that's how you pronounce it. Any sinologists here? Good. So it's Tao Te Ching. And it's Lao Tzu, okay, just for today. The book of the way and its power. Hands up, anybody's read it? Great, good. This is the central work on Taoism. Just as Hahnemann's great work, The Organon of the Medical Art, is the great work on homeopathy. Everything that is ever spoken about homeopathy comes from that, does it not? The Tao Te Ching is not the easiest book to read. It is not bedtime reading, neither is the Organon. Anybody take that to bed? So the Tao Te Ching is full of insight and full of enigma and full of poetry and full of paradox. And I've had so many copies because I've thrown so many copies at the wall. If it's this simple, why don't I understand it? Because it is full of paradox, like this thing called life and death is full of paradox. It's less of a book to read and understand and more one to ponder upon. It offers a kind of meditative experience to the reader. It takes me into a place that I can't speak about. I just feel different when I'm there. And I have been walking away from the Tao Te Ching and coming back to it for over 40 years. And I've come to know it as a philosophy of life. Whilst it makes suggestions to leaders about how to govern a country like you would cook a small fish, likely we don't see much of that around, it seems. I have found it less about nation and high ideals and more about folk, ordinary people, uslot, day-to-day living, how to live this thing called a life more skillfully, more artfully, how to live it well, suggesting that life is more about navigation than warfare. Much like water slowly wears down rock, it has quietly influenced my life and practice, has smoothed into me somehow. There are many translations. I think there are hundreds. But these are the ones that have spoken to me the most. This top one is the most well-known one. It has black and white photographs in it. It's beautiful. The second one is very pithy. It's more Zen-like. It cuts through the crowd. And the David Hinton one is very lyrical. He's a poet and a sinologist, which means he's unusual. Translating these things is very difficult. I've also been influenced by Alan Watts, yes, some grins there, and his wonderful book, Tao, The Watercourse Way. Water is a metaphor we will keep coming to, the Watercourse Way. And entertained by Benjamin Hoff and his Tao of Pooh. I recommend it, like reading, and The Day of Piglet. Many of you, I'm sure, will have enjoyed Ian Watson's The Tao of Homeopathy. Yeah? He got the title first. The bastard, we've talked about it. He appears to have moved on. So I'd like to offer a brief overview of philosophical Taoism as I understand it, and a consideration of how it chimes with homeopathy. And then I will attempt to answer my own question. Incidentally, that other well-known Chinese philosopher, Confucius, was a contemporary of Lao Tzu and supposedly very impressed on meeting him. And he was known to Hahnemann. In a letter found in Bradford's Life and Letters of Hahnemann, October 16th, 1830, Hahnemann wrote, "One of the most important rules for getting well is what Confucius called the golden mean, and described in an excellent book, the Aurea Mediocritas." I only discovered this recently, I have to say, and I experienced what's probably called a nerdy kind of thrill that maybe my two heroes, or at least Hahnemann, had heard of Lao Tzu. I think that's called sad amongst teenagers. Hello, that's all right. Make yourself in hand. So the model of Lao Tzu has evolved from unprejudiced observation, rings a bell, and deep meditation. It is a distillation of observations and meditations of many, many people over thousands and thousands of years. It was part of an oral tradition before it arrived in the written tradition. A primary principle is that there is nothing but energy. Now, just pausing there, in conversations with our dear friends in Orthodox medicine, when we talk about energy, they grin. They say things like, the space cadets have landed. They say we knit our own muesli. They're hilarious, aren't they? In the box. It's just that there is no such thing as the bloody box. So in a bigger world, it's a kind of a silly view to have. Energy, or chi. Many of you will have come across the term chi. Yeah? The universal breath force that surges through the countless transformations. All the energy and all the matter in the universe in one tissue simultaneously. The densest aspect of chi we call matter. The least dense is infinite potential. It covers quite a bit. Einstein, well known apparently as quite a good scientist, describes this as the field. Again, a term which Bill and Linda have talked about, the field. And he tells us the field is the only reality. The only reality. And he brings energy and matter together in that well-known equation, E equals mc squared. Energy equals the mass in something times the speed of light, which is a very big number, squared. Another primary principle is that everything changes. Everything changes. The only constant is change. Heraclitus, everything flows. The river is flowing, the mountain is flowing, you're flowing. You may not feel like it, but I'm telling you, you're flowing. Nothing abides. Everything changes, everything flows. You cannot step in the same river twice. Try it. You cannot treat the same patient twice. Things change fast. States change fast. We've seen it with remedies, haven't we? Shock, change fast. Consider how in 1 year's time, if we were to meet in 1 year's time, a few more grey hairs, wrinkles, I'd hopefully be recognisable. That's that strange fella. 98% of me will have changed. 98% of the atoms in this will have changed. How does that happen? How the hell does that happen? Isn't that what's called an everyday miracle? It still blows me completely away. 98% has changed. I know that we all know this, and yet we often act as if we do not. There is constant change. You will leave this room different in some way. It makes sense to embrace change and join the dance, otherwise you go crazy after a while. Another fundamental principle is polarity. We're homeopaths, we know about polarity. We live in a polarized world, do we not? If you say yes, you've confirmed it. You didn't say yes. Okay. Organized into pairs of opposites, such as day and night. Empty. Full. Energy and matter, health and sickness, susceptibility and immunity. Life, death. Which give rise to, complement and complete each other. And that's what this is. Greater the power, if you can hold it. The empirical world, which is called the 10,000 things in the Tao Te Ching. The 10,000 things living and non-living, conscious and unconscious, is in constant transformation and perpetually emerges, burgeons forth from a mysterious and generative source, and then returns to that source, only to re-emerge in a different form, in the ceaseless process of change. Following what Bill was talking about, you're watching my hand. You're all going to sleep over here. Stop. This mysterious generative source is primal, is undifferentiated potential energy or chi. Energy without form. Somehow it differentiates. It becomes energy within form and shapes itself into the 10,000 things, living and non-living, of the empirical world. Without form and within form establishes the polarity between yin and yang, masculine and feminine. The mysterious generative force is nameless. It is formless. It is sometimes referred to as non-being, non-existence. Nothing. Nothing. Absence. Void. Somehow it gives birth to form, which can be named, which can be known, gives rise to something, presence. All things originate from being, and being originates from non-being. Non-being is the mystery. Both being and non-being are made of the same stuff, chi. But once that stuff differentiates, they have different names. This and that. This is a bit left brain, I know, for a Sunday afternoon, but bear with it. We'll get to the right brain in a minute. Each of the 10,000 things, living and non-living, is a fleeting form, an expression of the generative source, is the source, is the source's doing, the Tao. Much like a wave is an expression of the ocean. It is the source in action. Lao Tzu did not know what to call this mysterious generative force. And whilst he referred to it, for example, as dark enigma, he called it Tao, the way. I understand him to mean that this is the way the world works. This is how cosmos and chaos interact. That the generative source yields the 10,000 things, which then return to that source over and over again. Return is the motion of Tao. Yielding is the way of Tao. Yielding, returning. You just play with that, you start to do Tai Chi. Yield, return. This is the way of it. This seems to be the way. Something for the right brain. Hold on. Okay, it's gone the wrong way. That's okay. Let's I told you. I warned you. That's supposed to be black.
Oh, well.
It's white. So that's strange. Nothing, all right? It's nothing. The idea is that it's black, so imagine that it's black. It's undifferentiated. Nothing. Yeah? It's primal, it's mystery, it's source, it's Tao. It's everything we cannot know and is unknowable. It's undifferentiated. It's non-being. And somehow, perhaps simply to experience itself, it somehow just manages to differentiate into something else, the other. And as soon as we've got that, we're in business. It's like, this, that. There's no experience until we have two, the world of two. The world of one is impossible to describe because we live in two. We live in the duality, in the world of polarity. So this is differentiation. We have this and that. We have something and nothing. We have presence. We have absence. Appearance. Mystery. Mystery is always the bigger part, like the unconscious mind. Being. Non-being. Yang. Yin. Masculine. Feminine. Tangible. Intangible. On. Off. So the mysterious generative force somehow pours itself into that. Mystery flows into that like an aperture. It flows through, surges through, and produces the 10,000 things. Burgeons forth. And then we have the balance. The universe comes into some kind of balance, and then it goes out of balance, and then it comes back into some kind of balance. Constant change and transformation. Birth, death, renewal. Endless. I don't know quite what's going to happen with this next button. That. Okay, so this is maximum yang. Take anything to its extreme, it will turn into its opposite. Yang dominant, perhaps the picture of today. The immature masculine, boys with their phallic toys. A gold tower has arisen in the West. It won't last. It will come down. It will change. How is not for us to know, but it will change. We are all I. We are all it. We are each Tao, the mystery, experiencing itself. If we perceive life as the organic expression of mystery, of Tao, then we don't have a life. We are life. Try that one with your teenagers. Get a life, Dad. I am life, son. That's what they do. They laugh. Thus. Therefore, everything flows. Yeah? Everything changes. That's it. Only nothing abides. Only no thing abides. Only the mystery abides. The tricky part for us humans is that we are self-conscious. We experience ourselves as separate from nature. David White, a poet whose work I really love, we are the one part of creation that knows what it is like to live in exile. Crow is crow, mountain is mountain. We think we are this or we are that. Lao Tzu suggests that we stop our endless self-bloody reflection. Get over ourselves. Embrace simplicity. Observe the weave of things and work with them. Work with it rather than against it, because trying to change what is creates resistance, friction, pain. Stop trying and simply be. Get out of your own way. If you are nothing doing, you can't go wrong. Advice from Lao Tzu. Best to be like water, which benefits the 10,000 things and does not contend. Water doesn't try. Doesn't give a shit. Just flows. Doesn't try or strive or force. It does not coerce. It flows effortlessly. And yet, the Grand Canyon is an example of how the softness of water can overcome the hardness of rock. And water flows from high to low, favouring low, keeping low, following gravity, falling and tumbling down to the sea, rising as clouds, only to fall again as rain and snow. And it's perfect Isn't it? Isn't water perfect? Have you ever sat watching a stream or the ocean and said to one of your mates, "Did you see that wave? It's crap, isn't it?" You don't, do you? Because it's perfect. Of itself, it's just flowing. And we are 70 to 80% water, apparently. We too flow. We too fall. We fall in love. We fall asleep. We fall ill. Bill was talking about symptom from synpicting, to fall. We fall apart, we fall in and out. Our tears fall, and our heart sinks. We stand or fall together. Our collective delusion that we are separate from natural process is a consequence of what we call the fall. The fall of man. Nations and individuals rise and fall, so trust that they will. As do our chests in breathing. All things always finally fall. All things always return to the ground of their being, the mysterious source. Return is the motion of Tao. Gravity rules. Gravity rules, which means that it's tea time. That went very quickly. 15 minutes is our tea break. I'm going to start at past. If you're not here, you'll miss something really funny and really good. So a quick pee and a tea, yeah? Blimey, we stopped and came back in 20 minutes. It's possible. Great. I'm just going to carry on because I've got far too much, and there we are. One of the things you picked up is the power of nothing. And we're homeopaths. We give nothing. Ha! Don't we? We work with potencies, medicines with apparently nothing in them, and are constantly surprised and delighted and astonished at what they can do, what they can help other suffering human beings to achieve. I have often prescribed CM and MM potencies and been absolutely delighted with the result. Even more of nothing. Nothing is very powerful. And remembering that we are not as solid as we look. Every atom within us, the nucleus of every atom within us, is as a grain of sand on the floor of St. Paul's Cathedral. We're full of space. We're full of nothing. I've got loads of stuff on how homeopathy and Taoism work together, and we ain't got time. So I'm just going to throw a couple of ideas, like the nothing. From the Tao Te Ching, know what is enough, abuse nothing, know when to stop, harm nothing. Remember the Hippocratic thing of, in the face of disease, make a habit of two things, either help or do nothing? That's us! We can celebrate that, can't we? We do no harm. To gather, you must scatter. To weaken, you must strengthen. To heal, you must first make sick. That echoes our homeopathic aggravation. Both Taoism and homeopathy recognize polarity. Oh, there's just so much. I'm offering the idea, which could be a whole conference in a way. Homeopathic medicine is essentially feminine. It's essentially feminist. Oh, good. We'll start another conference on that one. Ooh, Sunday afternoon. Ooh, feminism. Ooh. Whilst the Tao cannot really be described, Lao Tzu often talks about it as the dark female enigma. He offers that we know the masculine and yet keep to the feminine. And in homeopathy, we need that sword of discernment, don't we, to decide what needs to be cured, to decide what medicine to give. But by and large, we are treating the whole organism as a whole, not breaking it down into bits, which is more of a masculine way. We do not prescribe heroic medicines. We prescribe medicines which embrace the organism. So in many ways, it's feminist. The dragon. In the myths of ancient China, the awesome force of change was embodied in dragon. A quote from David Hinton, "A dragon was in constant transformation, writhing through all creation and all destruction, shaping itself into the 10,000 things, tumbling through their traceless transformations. Through this poetic lens, we are all dragon. We are all Tao, we are all dragon. According to legend, when Confucius met Lao Tzu, he said it was like facing a dragon. And in ancient China, the word dragon was sometimes used to honor an old master, wise and vital, a force for change. Samuel Hahnemann, father of homeopathy, died in Paris at the grand old age of 88, married to Melanie, age 40, or who was 40 years younger than him. He had a thriving influence, thriving practice, and an influence which is still felt today, a dragon of medicine. It's not his fault that he's been airbrushed out of the history of medicine. A dragon of medicine. So, I have to now answer my question. How do we do what we do? Lao Tzu wrote, the way to do is to be. Rumi, the life gift is given and then taken away. It is not for us to know why or how. Grace comes with the creation word, be. That gate opens unhesitatingly. Between the push of B and the smooth launch of E, there is an infinite moment when everything happens. Between the push of B and the smooth launch of E, there is an infinite moment when everything happens. That's it. That's where we need to get to. So first, in our work, we must be awake, open, clear about our participation in the now streaming Tao. Alert to possibility, comfortable with impermanence. Perhaps, somehow, over time, whatever that is, our experiences in the field, in the Tao, accrue layer upon layer upon layer into something we recognize as presence. John O'Donoghue, an Irish mystic and poet, presence is the whole atmosphere of a person, their experiences and essential nature. It is something you sense and know but cannot grasp. Intangible is another intangible. And it's always in subtle flow. The task is to cultivate an authentic presence, one which is clear, one which is non-judging and open. We all cultivate our presence in different ways, and we mature our presence in different ways. Essentially, by deepening our connection to the is, to the isness. Deepening our connection to our authentic self through experience and inner work. We work to deepen our understanding of the nature of things. That nature heals, that everything changes, and there is no such thing as security. We live on a ball of rock spinning through space. The idea of security is ridiculous. We need to embrace that, embrace impermanence. There is only this infinite moment when everything happens. Being fully attentive to that moment and responding to the greater good is what I mean by authentic. The willingness to stand in change itself, in the now streaming Tao, and respond to what emerges with a clear heart, to what emerges. To come into alignment with the forces shaping change. When we sit down with another human being, we have no idea what's going to happen, do we? It's part of the thrill of it. So be. The next step is to be with. I will show you this next step. To be with. This means to show up fully, to be present fully. to be in the present fully. This can be profoundly healing of itself, can't it? I'm sure you've all got those experiences. Suzanne, of itself, healing. It's generally understood that the therapeutic relationship, the complete engagement with the other, is the most profound therapeutic tool. Sometimes we need a scalpel, sometimes we need that, but the therapeutic relationship is the thing we're all honing, isn't it? It's a real skill. We hone our ability to settle into an attentive and intentive stillness within which our presence opens to the presence of the other, invites it, encourages it, allows it to come forth, to come into itself within the focused present. The healthiest place to be, even for somebody with a diagnosis of terminal illness, in the moment. Listening deeply to the other is a spiritual skill through which something essential can safely step forward and be acknowledged, be witnessed, be met, and through which the listener can briefly enter into a similar state. Does that sound something you've experienced? We can enter into a similar state as the sufferer, and so we become homeopathic. That's when the consultation is homeopathic of itself. And if we practice homeopathy over many, many years, we become increasingly homeopathic. Our presence becomes homeopathic. And then you can throw your bloody repertory away, as Bill suggested. Quite. One becomes homeopathic more and more by doing less and less. When I am fully present, when I am less self-conscious and more nothing's doing, when I am more dragon, the more gets done. Questions and symptoms, causes, medicines, miasms, they just arise naturally. I don't have to think about what I'm going to ask. Easily, spontaneously, of themselves. When I get out of my own way, what needs to happen seems to happen much more easily. Echoing what Bill was saying, don't work at it. So people go home and I'm working on my cases. God, that looks hard, doesn't it? I'm reminded of sports people who will say something magical happens on the field, say, and they will say afterwards, I don't know what happened, I was just in the zone, and then it happened of itself. Something which seems extraordinary takes over. We do have to learn our materia medica and our philosophy and our tools and practice with them, and then at a certain point begin to put them down or allow them to come into our usage by being, rather than doing so very, very much. I was asked to visit a woman in hospital some while ago. Let's call her Breda. She was in her mid-30s, had 3 children under the age of 6, and a diagnosis of terminal cancer, ovarian. I walked into the side ward as calmly as I could, thinking, what the hell can I bring to this? She was sitting up in bed talking to somebody at the end of it. Another person was massaging her shoulders. There was the smell of all kinds of lovely aromatherapy all over the place. A man, her husband, sat in another corner talking to another man who turned out to be a doctor. There was a lot going on in this room. We shook hands and I was offered a chair near the bed. All around her were pictures of children, balloons, cards. We shook hands, and as I sat down, I asked her how she was doing, and she smiled and said, shit, thanks. It wasn't the brightest of questions, really. I have to say she looked it. She was pale, she was drawn, she was thin, tight. And it seemed like, I'm not going to ask about your bowel movements and what's your favourite food and how's your mother issue, you know. It's like, what's the worst thing about this situation, Breda? And she started going on about a big diatribe about the chemo and its side effects and how she couldn't sleep. And she went, and then I just paused her and said, what's the worst thing, Breda? She came back with how angry she felt that the doctors hadn't diagnosed her condition, and Breda, the worst thing And then there was an infinite moment when everything happened. Her face collapsed and she howled that I'm fucking dying and I won't see my children grow up. And she collapsed. Her face just dissolved. And she howled and she emptied herself. It's about 5 or 10 minutes. She emptied herself. And then she looked up and kind of smiled and said, thank you. I think I can do it now. And I left her. And she passed away that night. I did nothing. There's no remedy for death. There's no remedy in that situation. She unstuck herself. Isn't that what our medicines do? We help people to unstick themselves, and then we get the hell out of the way and let them fix themselves. So the question arose just from being. Be there. We then go with. So be with, go with. We prescribe medicines, don't we, which go with the natural best reaction of the life force. The dynamist decides this is the way to go, and we give a medicine which in trials on healthy people does the same, encourages. So we go with, and we go with them in the journey. We're with them every step of the way. Bye-bye, Linda. It's trying to creep out. Bless you. So it's about going with. See you, Bill.
I'm on that lift as well.
Okay. So let's just do this as a kind of a mime, because we don't have much time. So this is for the right brain. It seems to me that what we do, we prepare ourselves for consultation. And we talked earlier about water going down, falling. We fall, we sink into our hips. We let our diaphragm go down. There's a down, so we're waiting. Okay, preparation for consultation. Lean forward, completely balanced with the hand. Hello, welcome. And then we do this thing called holding the space. There's nothing here. Holding the space. And then there might be a couple of questions like name, address, telephone number, so the other human animal is watching you. Don't forget they're watching you. And then, what would you like my help with? And then it's about listening and yielding and allowing and following and then returning with another question. And it is a dance. It's an energetic dance, isn't it? Yielding. This is very feminine. Holding this space, holding this nothing. And then perhaps sometimes there is an infinite moment when everything happens. And you know you've got to the heart of things. You know you've touched the tender centre of the case. And then gradually it comes together until there's the 200 centesimal potency of lec caninum. Next. And that is our work. That was the fee going in the pocket. So do you see there's the masculine and then there's the feminine. Hold that. And then the discerning sword might come in. That. And I prefer to give the medicine whilst we're both in the field, and there's something in this. I believe this is the best medicine for you, rather than I'll put it in the pipe. Does that make some sense? Just saves a lot of talking sometimes. And then we follow the changes induced in the patient, and we have follow-up. What happened? What happened to the stream? Where did it go? We follow up, most important. And by going along with things, we avoid becoming separated from them. And this going with can also end up being something called stays with. We can work with families over a very long time. Some of us I know, we've treated 4 generations of a family. Little granddaughter, when she was 4, we used to say, Granny, you need to go and see Mo. And now she's 25 and she's got a baby. And that is such a privilege. And privilege is an overused word. And it is a huge privilege. And homeopathically, it's useful because you see the epigenetic inheritance. It's really, really useful. And then we have, so I am rushing a bit because there's a hell of a lot to talk about. Let go. Let go of any notion of self-importance or the idea that you do any healing. You do not. We don't heal, they do. Yeah? The patient does all the healing. You're familiar with this, I trust. Yeah? Sometimes people say, thank you for curing my migraines. I make it a point to say, thank you for your thank you. I didn't. You did that. You do all the healing. That's empowering in and of itself, isn't it? You do all that. I did my bit. And let go of any notion that the medicine does the healing. It does not. Let go of all prejudice. Let go of attachment to the outcome. Despite your best efforts, some people will not get better and some people will die. Let go of your expectations of the outcome. I remember meeting this man and his diagnosis, his prognosis was poor. He'd had cancer of the colon, secondaries in the lung and the liver. He'd had all the surgery, chemotherapy and radiotherapy he was allowed, and they politely said, you have to go away and die. When I first met him, I thought there is very little we can do here. I gave him some arnica. He lived in France, so he was just about to catch the ferry a week later. He came back a week later, and I gave him carcinosinum 200C. And 7.5 years later, he's discharged. Completely cured, apparently. He still takes carcinosin 200 every Saturday. And the key indication was that when he took it, he said, I just felt warm. I have a warmth that I've never felt. When you think of the emotional freezing within carcinosin, there's this warmth. And he says, by the end of a week, by about Thursday or Friday, because I check on this, we email every 3 months, and when he comes over, I see him. My wife says, I can begin to cuddle you now. He takes the carcinosin on a Saturday. He's remarried the woman that he divorced. I mean, his life has changed completely. Carcinosin 200. And again, there was no proving. Sometimes the medicine needs to be given and given and given. Yeah? Let go of trying too hard. The force is with you when you let go of forcing. Just drop forcing, drop trying. You know the Nux vomica patient? I'm trying to relax. Let go of the notion that you always have to prescribe a medicine. You do not. What does this patient need at this time? Be truly holistic, not kind of half holistic. Be truly holistic. What does this person need? Bye, lovely. It might be an operation. It might be an acupuncture needle. It might be something that you can't do. Let go of being attached to being the person. It doesn't matter who the person is who helps them finally and most. It doesn't have to be you. Let go of thinking that it's a bad idea to refer back to an allopath. They save lives too, and they're on our side. I'm tired of all this crap about dividing. They are our friends and our colleagues. They see things differently. We need them. Imagine it's siphoning orthodox medicine off the planet. Just us homeopaths then. Oh, we don't, we're all on the same bloody side, aren't we? Let go of thinking that our work is to preserve life at all costs. It ain't. When the time comes, there is no remedy for death, and death needs to be allowed. We can give carbo-veg to a resuscitated child, and then we walk away, and we have no idea whether that child will recover or not, because it's not up to us. There are other forces at work. Let go of wanting to save the world with homeopathy. Most of us qualify, I'm going to save the world. Oh, maybe that's a bad idea. Let go of wanting to win the scientific argument about homeopathy. Let go of that. On live television, Newsnight, completely eviscerating the rabid critics. They're in tears. Jon Snow and Jeremy Paxman are saying, we're sorry. And you rip open your shirt and there's a t-shirt that says, homeopaths do it with potency. Ha! Let go of that. Let go of not the river tour. Let go. And notice how easy or difficult letting go can be. We need to hold on at times, don't we? And at other times we need to let go. And part of the art is to decide when. What is the right thing to do? Hold on. Sometimes we need to let go. Let go of any notion of control. We've talked about that. Let go of thinking you're a rubbish homeopath and that homeopathy's crap. We do our best, and if it doesn't work out, we go to supervision and we learn and we continue. Let go of always wanting to cure. Palliation is not a dirty word. Ali worked in palliative care for 6 years, and very often the consultant would say, I don't know what it is that you do, but can you sort this out? And it was not about saving the life, it was about palliation. I remember an elderly lady, we'll call her Phyllis, who travelled a long way to see me, and she began by saying, I don't anticipate coming all this way again, because I don't imagine I'll be around for very long. I have incurable cancer, and I don't want to waste your time on that. There's only one thing I want you to sort out, and if you can do that, I'll be very pleased. So she had breast cancer, and following a left-sided mastectomy, had developed a suppurating abscess in her axilla. And nothing, pardon me, was clearing it up. She said, it hurts like someone is poking me with a stick, but I can manage that, actually, dear. It's the smell I cannot bear. It's like I'm already decomposing. I have to change my dressing at least 12 times every day. It's vile and quite distressing. If you can help me with that, I don't want to waste your time on the food and all that stuff. I've been to homeopath in the past. Don't. Just this. So despite my best efforts to engage, I just want help with this. So I went with carbo animalis, charred oxide, 30C, TDS for 2 days. She left a message on my answer phone at 9 p.m. a week later. All cleared up. Thank you. No more to say. I reread my Materia Medica and relearned the key mental symptom of carbo animalis is avoids conversation. I didn't know that. She called at a time when I would not be available to speak. Point is, she was very happy with palliation. Letting go is an easy thing to say. I often say that, but it's very easy for me to say that. However, I think it's attributed to the Buddha. In the end, only 3 things matter. How fully you have lived, how gently you have loved, and how well you have learnt to let go of things not meant for you. Following on from let go, I trust, is let be. Let it be that things are as they are. Don't need to try and fix them all the time. Best to be like water. Just keep flowing. I once worked with a likeable young lad who had a diagnosis of depressive ME. Haven't got time to go through the whole case. The long and short of it was that his essential feeling was his father had treated him harshly. He had a desperate desire. I want to be loved or dead. It's very clear, this young man. There is a part of me that is so desperately hurt. I want to be held, loved, told it's all right, or dead. He was taking Prozac. Over a period of 3 months that I saw him, I gave varying potencies of aurum. I asked him to take it in front of me. I gave him cifolinum. And then he developed a rage against life with the whatever it was I fucking trusted and let me down. I want to smash headfirst through windows or drive really fast into a tree. I even asked him, would you sign a declaration that if you think you're going to kill yourself, you'll phone me first? Which sounds a daft thing to do, but when people are in that state, they'll think, oh, I'd better. But he was a smart young lad. Oh no, I don't want to be unfettered anymore. And he said, there's something within me that wants to destroy me. And because he was an intelligent young man, I talked about the syphilitic inheritance, syphilitic miasm. And he just burst into tears. He said, that makes so much sense. There was alcoholism, suicide, depression. You know the picture. The last time we met, he talked about having an 8-ton Darth Vader on the back of his surfboard. He said, it's just going to take me down. I know it's going to take me down. Take you down into what? Down into a sea of love. My only question now is, am I worthy of this? Have I suffered enough? A few days later, his sister called me early one morning and said he'd done it. He put the hose pipe through the exhaust and into his window, and he'd done it in a very beautiful place. It hit me hard, I have to say. This was, about 20 years ago. I felt a complete failure. I felt homeopathy was a complete failure. How could I not have helped? And then it began to dawn on me that actually we can only do what we can do. It seems we practice medicine, not miracles, even though sometimes it appears miraculous. I took his case to supervision, like you do. We decided that I'd done my best, the outcome was out of my hands, and that maybe he had finally decided he was worthy of that sea of love, and jumped. It's not for us to say. There are bigger forces at work. Even so, I celebrated his courage. Even so, I acknowledged some warrior aspect of him that's what he needed to do, and he did it. It was not for me to judge. So let it be so. So be it. Amen. Awesome. Maybe let it be so that homeopathy is not currently understood in the world, or appreciated in the world at large. Maybe let homeopathy be like water, which is what the rabid critics of it think it is anyway. Let it be like water, which is peerless in overcoming the hardness of denialism. Let us keep practicing our art. So, from be, we go to be with, to go with, to let go, to let be, to so be it, to be. I'm offering that this flow could be usefully considered by all physicians, all healers. Grace comes with that word, that magic word, the creation word, be. So we acknowledge Tao, we acknowledge mystery. I'm coming back to still answering my question, and we work with it. Another tool that I have found useful in our work is that awareness of the natural phases, the times and tides and seasons and cycles in a human life. Over 3.5 billion years ago, a little packet of chemicals fidgeted into life. Bill Bryson. Fidgeted into life and somehow passed on its DNA. A process which has continued in an unbroken line to now. To this present moment. It is beyond miraculous that we are having this conversation. The life gift is passed on. The life gift is passed on through the double helix, enters into the womb of the mother, folds into fetus, and then falls finally downwards into birth, unfurling into this world where air becomes breath and life is infant. It moves on into childhooding, where nature and nurture neglect have their most powerful influence. Sliding then into the fevered bewilderedness, that is adolescence. The transition into adulthood. Adulthood, that time of achievement and failure and wounding and healing and becoming parents ourselves. The midlife, the midlife. Crisis and opportunity. Feeling lost to hopefully feeling found. The transition into maturity when we have learned enough about who we are and can begin to be that. Then the silvering on into senex or crone, into elder. And then the final unfurling into our losing, into death, where breath becomes air again. Returning. Do you see? It's returning always, returning to mystery. Just as there is ebb and flow in the changing seasons, so it is in every human life. And washing through these seasons is grief, isn't it? Grief. That which makes us most human. That which moves us down, not always gently, moves us down towards the gravitas necessary to walk lightly upon the earth. Gravity is the root of lightness. Our lives are filled with loss. Loss upon loss upon loss. Of innocence, of a leg, of a child, a chance, a childhood, of a family, a home, a homeland, a hope for a future. It seems that grief is an essential component of all transitions and all rites of passage. Grief is a country that nobody wants to visit, and yet we find ourselves there somehow. Not really sure how we got there. No sense of direction, no map, only our battered heart. It's a country called chaos. And the journey through it is the only medicine for loss. We can prescribe our natrimures and our Ignatius, and they will help. Only the journey is the medicine for loss, for grief. And it is a solitary journey, a solitary passage. There is no getting over huge loss. There is the possibility of finding a different, lighter way to carry it. So as homeopaths, we work with these seasons and we work with their griefs, paying attention to beginnings, paying attention to ends, understanding that people can get lost or stuck in transitions, or simply not understand that the current difficulties are appropriate for their season. Confusion and vulnerability in all phases of transition. People say, I feel empty, I feel lost, and I don't know which way to turn. I don't know who I am anymore. I don't know what I want, and I'm scared. Of course you are. Of course you are, and that's okay. This is not pathology, this is transition. Yeah. Given that it is inevitable, we only need to know if our grieving, if our transiting, if our grief, our crisis is as healthy as it can be. There is movement, not stuckness. That there is flow. Vulnerability. I feel so vulnerable. Vulnerability can be seen positively. It's a sign of renewal. Vulnerability, softness, tenderness, yielding. These are signs of life, aren't they? And renewal. The blade of grass just coming through the earth. Very, very delicate, very vulnerable, and yet exciting. Around beginnings and ends, I have learned to embrace tenderness. Lao Tzu, a man is born gentle and weak. At his death, he is hard and stiff. Green plants are tender and filled with sap. At their death, they are withered and dry. The stiff and the unbending is the disciple of death. The gentle and the yielding and the vulnerable is the disciple of life. I've worked with many people in this midlife. When they find themselves, as Dante says, in a dark wood where the true way is wholly lost, that's the place they need to be in, and we don't need to be worrying about remedies. They need to be lost to be found. How important to celebrate that. Now you're in the midlife. And what lies beyond that? It would appear that for some there is an easing into senex, into crone, into elder. We can celebrate that. We need elders, don't we, in our culture? And we don't have many, so we've got to make it up ourselves somehow. Elder, not old man. The Malodoma Some talks about we don't have Alzheimer's and stuff like this in our culture because we listen to our elders. We're interested in them. I can imagine a lot of your elders just feel nobody wants to know, so I'll just curl up and sit in a cupboard. Yeah? Eldership is really important, and so important to acknowledge that. Can I ask what's the time? Sorry.
15 minutes is quite fast.
Okay, thank you. I've got to talk about death quickly. And so there is this thing called death. Actually, no, the last thing is 10 words that they're not there. 10 words that I think every physician or healer in the whole world ought to consider. First of all, physician, heal thyself. That's an irritating one when you've got a cold, isn't it? One of your patients will surely say that to you. Oh, you've got a cold. Physician, you know what they say? And then, know thyself. David was talking about that. Know thyself. And then in the process of knowing thyself, once you've kind of worked out who you reckon you are, be thyself. And then when you're being who you really are, and life is full and rich, and maybe you're just beginning to think, I'm quite useful, I'm getting the hang of this, I've got something to offer. Get over yourself. Physician, get over thyself. And so to this thing called death. For some of us, death comes with a sweeping swiftness. For some of us, death comes with a creeping slowness. For all of us, death comes. It's the great certainty, along with taxes, apparently. Death is the great certainty. The great uncertainty continues to be what happens to us after we die. Here is mystery again, whispering, mystery. The unknown. The two great mysteries which yet are one. Again, I am suggesting that we come to some kind of terms with mystery, that it's really okay to not know. It's very liberating. Patients often say, I'm glad you say that you don't know. Usually I start, when I've first consultation, my practice is towards the end of it to make an offering of what I've perceived and what I'd like to prescribe and why. As I start that feedback, I say, I just start from the position that I know nothing, because it's the only reasonable position to assume. And I see from their faces that they like that. They obviously want some degree of expertise, but in that moment, because you are one of 7 billion worlds on this planet, how can I know? And so we start from there, and then I might make some conversation about their inheritance or whatever. Knowing nothing is powerful. Or acknowledging. If we acknowledge what we don't know, then knowledge is excited because of polarity. Right? I'm suggesting that we come to some kind of terms with mystery, with the reality that we are born to die. Following a diagnosis of some terminal disease, a patient might cry out, I'm going to die, but I don't know when. It has ever been thus. It's the same for all of us, isn't it? I'm not diminishing the shock. Equally, it is the same for all of us. I just think we could live more fully and be kinder. Kindness is a good thing, isn't it, in this world? We could be kinder to one another if we acknowledged that we are impermanent, that we're going to die. In our culture at this time, it seems to me that death is the final taboo. I think it's a little different over here, but death is the final taboo. We need to talk about it. Perhaps the awareness of death will remind us all of the truly important things in life. What are they? The same old, gorgeous old things. Love, family, friendship, meaningful work, being true to oneself. Apparently, the commonest deathbed regrets include those. I never had the courage to live the life that I truly am. Oscar Wilde said, the life that most people lead is not their own. Isn't that sad? If you're not going to be you, who else is going to be you? The world will miss something. And what if we are deluded in loving life and hating or fearing death? Huang Tzu, another Chinese sage, wrote, how do I know that we who despise and fear death are not exiled children who don't know their way home? A quote from Isabel Allende, from that perspective, silence before being born. Silence after death. Life is nothing but noise between two unfathomable silences. If we're going to love life, we could wonder about loving death. Yeah? Thomas Pachero, an Argentinian homeopath, he talks about the law of cure. And And he says, we are born to die, and like a current of energy that discharges itself from the centre, our life cycle ends with the dispersion of the elements which make up our physical body. That's another quote from him. The purpose of the law of cure is not to prevent death, but to allow death to come smoothly and normally, thus allowing the individual to fulfill the highest purpose of existence, to become aware of a metaphysical relationship with the whole of existence. Does that make some sense to you? That's Pasher. So to preserve life at all costs is to go against the natural order, is to force things. This is likely to lead to friction and further suffering. Doctors, it seems, they're coming out and saying this. They feel obliged to keep going. You know, instead perhaps of saying, you know, a third operation, how much do you love your uncle? Because the chances are slim that it's going to go well. He's going to be in one of those wards where people are largely vegetable. Is that really in anybody's best interest? But the conversation isn't had, so they do the operation. Overdoing. Death itself is probably nothing to be afraid of. As Mark Twain put it, I do not fear death. I've been dead for billions and billions of years before I was born. Not the slightest inconvenience from it. There is no death, only a change of worlds. Dying is a different matter. By and large, we want to die with our loved ones, we want to die at home. Clearly, that's not often the case. Even so, conscious palliative care can help the process of dying be more conscious, be more of a gift. Can ease the person into whatever it is that lies beyond this world. And that's where a good funeral comes in. One that works. One that works on many levels. A funeral is a respectful way to dispose of a body, to honour the death and to celebrate, that word again, to celebrate the unique life and the unique person that went before in an authentic manner, in a way which is true to the people who knew that person. I don't know about you, I've been to loads of funerals in the past. You know, the vicar, he didn't know Bill. He wasn't like that at all. He wasn't a saint, he was a bastard. Yeah, not at all like the person. The best feedback for me as a celebrant is when somebody afterwards will say, that was a lovely day, that's just like my dad. And I have to say, being a homeopath is really good training to be a celebrant, because I first of all had to get over the thing of, how are you? You know, think about prescribing. It's like, how's things, by and large, in the family? And then it's about listening in a different way. So, if you like, instead of finding a medicine, it's about weaving the ceremony, the funeral ceremony, which will do the job of the medicine. Yeah? Something that resonates with the family as a whole, so that there can be some healing through this difficult process. As we approach the end of our weekend, and I've got 10 minutes.
You've got 10 minutes this time.
Okay, good. That's the right answer. Thank you. I'd like to talk about Bernie. Bernie's his real name. I've spoken to his partner Sarah, and she said, yes, please use our real names, because then it's continuing, Bernie. He's an engaging and dynamic man who I treated and whose funeral I took. Bernie presented with a diagnosis of lung cancer, having smoked a pipe for 48 years. When he arrived in my consulting room, he wasn't interested in anything other than, I'm seeking peace within myself. I've not liked myself for many years. I've been a very angry person most of my life. And as my partner Sarah has pointed out, I've been living with guilt for too long. Clinically, he had a 2.5 centimetre lesion in his left lung and was in a lot of pain. Within the next week, he was due to have a biopsy, another scan, and then a meeting with his consultant to decide what to do. He did not want surgery. I gave lycopodium 50 mg 3 times a day for a couple of days, and then hit the carcinosin co. I'm not going to see him for a couple of weeks. Stuff's going on. When we met again, a common story, the biopsy had been bungled. He'd had a pneumothorax and was in a lot of pain, bleeding and trouble breathing. as he put it, a compassionless consultant had missed the fact that the cancer had spread to his adrenals, lymph glands and esophagus. The prognosis was poor. 6 months to 2 years. Chemotherapy was suggested and a drug trial. Our second meeting, his wife came up first and he'd gone to the hospital, and he came back and he said, I've just seen the chemo club. I'm not doing that. Sitting in a line with everybody else, the vile chemicals going into his arm. I'm not doing that. He felt joyful the first time he took the carcinosin and was much happier in himself. Over the next few weeks, 6 weeks, a lot happened very quickly, like it often does in these situations. There's a kind of loss of control. And as homeopaths, we're often not the front line of care. From sporadic conversations with Sarah, I learned he'd had a chest drain which had become infected. He'd had so much morphine that he'd become frightened and constipated. Radiotherapy and a whole bunch of treatments had messed him up. Various homeopathics were sent. You can imagine opium, extra time to give one dose of 30C, dingly-dang, and wait. There's lots going on. Give. Several times he had crashed into despair, loneliness and tears. I can't get to grips with being alone. He's always been a very independent man, and I dread Sarah not being there when I go to sleep. He had no understanding of what was happening to him, and one doctor had said he had 12 weeks. He said, I'm not listening to that. My breathing has been so bad since the biopsy and the radiotherapy. It's laid me low. I'd like to see some spark of positive change. I asked him, I went to visit him then in his home. I asked him what made his life worth living. And he burst out, Sarah and my children. I don't want them to suffer. It's so unfair on them. I'd rather sleep more and more and more than Sarah have to wipe my fucking ass. What the fuck should I do? There was that. There was an infinite moment. It seemed a very long moment. And something happened. Up until that moment, I had been attending Bernie as homeopath, best I could, being present as fully as I could. Yet his heartfelt question rang through me like a bell. It took me down deeper into the present. And from the most authentic place that I reached, I found myself saying to him, Bernie, it would appear that you are in your dying. So perhaps you need to let go of your loved ones as they need to let go of you. He went very quiet. I left him with a prescription of carcinosin for once a week, and arsenicum album 10M. I told him how to take it. PRN. He squeezed my hand feebly on the way out and said that was very helpful. Now, every year, everything I ever learned in my entire lifetime comes back to this. The fires and the black river of loss, whose other side is salvation, whose meaning none of us will ever understand. To live in this world, you must be able to do 3 things. To love what is mortal, to hold it against your bones, knowing that your own life depends on it. And when the time comes to let it go, to let it go. That's Marianne. Incidentally, it's not my practice to give advice like that. This was a different situation. This was a different level of work. The rules of therapeutic engagement fell away. Uncluttered, authentic humanity seems to be the most potent way to be with people in this situation. They don't want bullshit. Bullshit shrivels in these situations. Conversations need to happen. He appreciated the no bullshit. I visited again a week or so later to find he was much better in himself, no major crashes. He had a chest infection. He's taking lots of antibiotics, but he'd reduced his morphine by 50% and taking loads less paracetamol. He was eating well, had put on weight, and had been to the pub 2 Sundays running and drunk half a bottle of some very good white wine. That conversation, he said, best thing in my whole life. I've completely accepted my situation, and it makes things easier, more peaceful. I've spoken to my children, and we all know where we are with it. I asked him what it was about the conversation that had been the most useful. Being frank was an epiphany. We've talked in the family and it's opened up a whole new world for us. I feel a better person. Sarah came in. I'm better, aren't I, love? She agreed. And she told me that some moments he was fragile, but some moments he was burning. He's vulnerable and he asks for help now, but he's getting his mojo back, is how she put it. Breathing was unquestionably the issue. I left him with arsenicum 10M to take as needed. Please call me daily. Of course, she didn't. She meant to, she wanted to, but there's a roller coaster, isn't there, in this kind of situation. I left him, as Robert Bly wrote, trembling on the lip of the falls, like a note of music about to become nothing, because that's the reality for all of us, actually. 2 weeks later, he died of the chest infection. He and Sarah had married in the hospice, and like that note of music, he had become nothing. Again, I learned the power and the importance of presence, of going with the flow rather than resisting it. Death is the great leveler. It insists on authenticity. I remember when I was first in practice, I got my first cancer patient and I was really frightened. And maybe sometimes we get our first person who's terminally ill and going to die and we can feel the same. Just get over ourselves and be there. Just be there and listen and listen and listen and then shut up and listen some more. And be there. It's so potent, it is so powerful to do that. It seems to me that especially working around death and dying, we need to cultivate a presence which is not only clear and authentic, but encouraging and tender. Over the next few weeks, I worked with the family in creating an authentic funeral ceremony. They ran a gardening business, and they decided they'd drive Bernie to the crematorium in their van. Juniper Gardening Company. They just, as they put it, the sons that we just threw him in the back with the rakes and the bags. Sarah and the 4 boys, they carried him into the chapel with Bruce Springsteen's Glory Days, and I got the verger at the back to turn it up as loud as it will go. It was magnificent entrance. And then they recited a very long poem that they had written for him. And then we came to the committal. The committal, for those of you who don't know, is one of those, it's the last words that are said. You know, ashes to ashes, that kind of thing. And it is central to my practice as a celebrant that there is a ritual moment in the ceremony. A moment of crossing a threshold, of clearly entering into that shifted world. It is not helpful to fudge it. What I tend to do, by and large, is to place my hands on the coffin and speak to the dead as if he or she could hear, because I don't know whether they can or they can't. I speak to them as if they could hear. So name, we commit your body to the heat of cremation. This is the kind of thing. Later to be returned to the earth as ash, completing utterly the journey of your life. With great love and tender gratitude, we let you go into whatever it is that lies beyond this world. Always to be held in our remembering hearts. Remembrance. People don't die when they're remembered. With great love, we let you go. Go well, Bernie. Go free. And then I step back. And then the reflection music comes in. In this case, it was a lovely version of Somewhere Over the Rainbow. And then the curtains came round. As the music was playing, each family member very tearfully, very gently laid a flower on the coffin. And they said their farewell. And then they stood back as Monty Python's Always Look on the Bright Side of Life played really loudly. It filled the space. They held each other and they cried. And they celebrated him. And it was magnificent. And we can do this. We can celebrate life and we can celebrate death. And isn't that a wonderful thing to do? Yeah? And then they drove to their favourite wine bar and got gloriously drunk. You're good at that over here, I understand. And then, after the adrenaline and the distraction, of the funeral and its preparation, then the grief comes. Sarah found herself in that country, on that journey alone. Many people complete the journey and find their way out. Yet the world remains a shifted one. Some people stand in the borderlands, looking backwards and inwards. Some people set up home there, refugees from ordinary life, bewildered, bereft. As homeopaths, we can help frozen feelings to flow, can prescribe medicines which encourage an easing of the passage and a finding of the way. There is another tool that we can offer. It's called ritual. Alas, we don't have time to talk much about that. Okay. Ritual. The funeral ceremony must have that ritual moment. I think I'm going to leave ritual. It's a big subject. Many patients get it, however. It can be a candle and a photograph of somebody or something. A simple example then that I offer to children. Go down to the beach, pick up a stone with your right hand, and think of all the horrible feelings that you don't want anymore. Think of them, think of them, think of them. And then go down to the sea and hurl it. Hurl it out as far as you can. All ill be gone. And then breathe. And as you walk off the beach, pick up a stone with your left hand and put it in your pocket. All good become. Children can do that when they have anger about their parents or whatever it is. There are more elaborate things, but ritual isn't about dressing up in funny clothes and bones in noses. You know, it's something very simple that we can do alongside our medicines. Remember when Princess Diana died? I had about 14 Nature Muir patients saying, I said to them, take the medicine that morning and watch the television. Finally, they cried. They needed that, you know, that resonance with something. Okay, a poem to bring this together. When death comes, like the hungry bear in autumn. When death comes and takes all the bright coins from his purse to buy me, and then snaps the purse shut. When death comes like the measles pox, when death comes like an iceberg between the shoulders, I want to step through that door full of curiosity, wondering, what will it be like, that cottage of darkness? And therefore I look upon everything as a brotherhood and a sisterhood. And I look upon time as no more than an idea. And I consider eternity as another possibility. And I think of each life as a flower, as common as that field daisy and as singular. And each name, a comfortable music in the mouth, tending as all music does to silence. And each body, a lion of courage and something precious to the earth. When it's all over, I want to say all my life I was a bride married to amazement. I was the bridegroom who took the world into his arms. When it's over, I don't want to wonder if I have made of my life something particular and real. I don't want to find myself sighing or frightened or full of argument. When it's over, I don't want to find that I have simply visited this world. Mary Oliver again. Ali started with Mary Oliver, we're ending with Mary Oliver, a great poet. Lao Tzu would say, in a Chinese accent, which I'm not even going to try and do, it's all right, love. That's clearly not a Chinese accent. You can't just visit this world because you are of it. You are the world, you are life experiencing itself in this particular way. So we have celebrated luminous life from cradle to the grave. We could also, couldn't we celebrate those two great mysteries, which yet are one? Celebrate our conscious participation in the endless cycles of birth, death, rebirth. Celebrate renewal and the tenderness that comes with that. Celebrate the extraordinary fact that however fleeting, we are here. Celebrate the little shadow that runs across the grass and loses itself in the sunset. Celebrate that infinite moment when everything happens. I'm done. Thank you for your attention. I'll leave you with Dragon.